All right. Sorry, folks. Give me a minute now to get back over. I don't know why this keeps happening, but I'm going to share this now. I'm telling you, what a nightmare. Okay. No. Honest to God, I'm having a hell of a time. Um, all right, let's go over to Facebook first. I have to find, just give me, I'm really, really sorry, folks. It would not let me go live. It would not let me go live. I don't know why. So I'm just going to go over here. Hello. Please, if you're on the other one, please go back and tell everybody that we're here. I still have to find it on my computer. Okay, this one we're just going to delete. Okay, now I have to go over here so I can see the chat. Hey, honey, the timer will go off when it's the pizza's ready. Okay. Can y'all share this on Facebook? Because all right, now I am really, really sorry that happened. This is twice this has happened, and I had to restart the live stream on a whole new thing. So, sorry. Welcome to Little House Live, day 5. And where did I stop? Okay, so, oh, honey, love you. Oh, Howard, there's a rooster upright in the upright barrel by the chicken coop. Can you throw him into the greenhouse, please? I'll catch his brother tomorrow. All right, welcome to Little House Live, day 5. And what's going to happen is I'm not going to look at the chat at all until I've done reading. I'm going to start with, that's way past sundown for firearms to be going off. Don't care what season it is. I'm going to start with a little bit of historical background, and then we will read the next chapter or 2 in Little House in the Big Woods, okay? Make sure you're on live chat, not top chat. And Gracie, hush. Not that it matters. See, she's all excited because Howie's home. All right. So now I want to tell you folks that there is another autobiography. This is all the technical stuff. Okay. So I'm only getting little bits and pieces. I'm going to order the other autobiography that is finished. This is just all the raw stuff that's been kind of put it in here and footnoted and stuff. Okay. So then on Thanksgiving Day, November 26, I believe this is 1932, Marion Fiery wired the news that Harper and Brothers had decided to buy Wilder's manuscript. Wilder then telegraphed Knopf direct and withdrew Little House in the Woods. Lane wrote by with instructions that any contract from Harper's that appeared satisfactory to you will suit us. She even directed him to sign the contract on Wilder's behalf. Both Lane, which is her daughter, and her mother wanted to get the book into publication as quickly as possible. Virginia Kirkus, who directed the children's division at Harper and Brothers, wrote Wilder on December 8th, confirming the sale. I'm notifying Mr. By today that we are accepting your manuscript, Little House in the Woods. Now, the time frame goes back and forth. It says at some point in late 1931 or 1932, Wilder had started to work on another manuscript for children. Perhaps initially encouraged by the 3-book offer from Knopf. In March, she showed it to Lane, who began editing it on March 6, 1932. Its working title was Farmer Boy. This was the second book. Wilder had found a voice as a writer of historical and biographical fiction for children and seemed to lose interest in marketing the adult version of Pioneer Girl. Now, there is another, like I said, there is another version. Not another version, but it would be like Pioneer Girl it's another autobiography, okay, without all the footnotes and stuff. So I'm going to purchase that from Amazon as well so that we can go on and get more information, because these are just snippets. And I really had to read through a lot of that footnotes and stuff to get you this information. And the information is that she tried to sell it as a full autobiography, but her daughter or she broke some of it down into juvenile writing, and they didn't think it was going to go anywhere. But all of a sudden, she gets offered a 3-book deal for the children's books. And then they wired her and said, oh, by the way, the children's section of this company is going to be deleted. You may not want to take the contract, right? It was like an inside thing. And but her lawyer said, no, take the contract, because it is for 3 books, and we'll see what goes on. So she went to different publishers all over the place trying to get her books, her autobiography, and that's how they morphed into children's books. The Story of Pa and the Bear in the Way. Now, this is after The Two Big Bears, which was chapter 6. So this is still part of chapter 6, okay? When I went to town yesterday with the furs, I found it hard walking in the soft snow. It took me a long time to get to town, and other furs had come in earlier to do their trading. The storekeeper was busy, and I had to wait until he could look at my furs. Then we had to bargain about the price of each one, and then I had to pick out things I wanted to take and trade. So it was nearly sundown before I could start home. I tried to hurry, but the walking was hard, and I was so tired. So I had not gone far before night came, and I was alone in the big woods without my gun. There were still 6 miles to walk, and I came along as fast as I could. The night grew darker and darker, and I wished for my gun because I knew that some of the bears had come out of their winter dens. I had seen their tracks when I went to town in the morning. Bears are hungry and cross at this time of year. You know they have been sleeping in their dens all winter long with nothing to eat, and that makes them thin and angry when they wake up. I did not want to meet one. I hurried along as quickly as I could in the dark. By and by, the stars gave a little light. It was still black as pitch where the woods were thick, but in the open places I could see dimly. I could see the snowy road ahead a little way, and I could see the dark woods standing all around me. I was glad when I came to an open space where the stars gave me this faint light. Excuse me, I have an itch. And it won't let me. Okay. All the time I was watching as well as I could for bears. I was listening for the sounds they make when they go carelessly through the bushes. Then I came again into an open space, and there, right in the middle of my road, I saw a big black bear. He was standing up on his hind legs looking at me. I could see his eyes shine. I could see his pig snout. I could even see one of his claws in the starlight. My scalp prickled, and my hair stood straight up. I stopped in my tracks, and I stood still. The bear did not move. There he stood, looking at me. I knew it would do no good to try and go around him. He would follow me into the dark woods, where he could see better than I could. I did not want to fight a winter-starved bear in the dark. Oh, how I wished for my gun. I had to pass that bear to get home. I thought that if I could scare him, he might get out of the road and let me go by. So I took a deep breath, and suddenly I shouted with all my might and ran at him, waving my arms. He didn't move. I did not run very far toward him, I tell you. I stopped and looked at him, and he stood looking at me. Then I shouted again. There he stood. I kept on shouting and waving my arms, but he did not budge. Well, it would do me no good to run away. There were other bears in the woods. I might meet one at any time. I might as well deal with this one as with another. Besides, I was coming home to Ma and you girls. I would never get here if I ran away from everything in the woods that scared me. So at last I looked around and I got a good big club, a solid heavy branch that had been broken from a tree by the weight of the snow in winter. I lifted it in my hands and I ran straight at that bear. I swung my club as hard as I could and brought it down bang on his head. And there he stood still. And there he still stood, for he was nothing but a big black burned stump. I had passed it on my way to town that morning. It wasn't a bear at all. I only thought it was a bear because I had been thinking all the time about bears and being afraid to meet one. It really wasn't a bear at all? Mary asked. No, Mary, it wasn't a bear at all. There I had been yelling and dancing and waving my arms all by myself in the big woods, trying to scare a stump. Laura said, ours was really a bear, but we were not scared because we thought it was Suki. Pa did not say anything, but he hugged her tighter. Ooh, that bear might have eaten Ma and me all up, Laura said, snuggling closer to him. But Ma walked straight up to him and slapped him, and he didn't do anything at all. Why didn't he do anything? I guess he was too surprised to do anything, Laura, Pa said. I guess he was afraid when the lantern shone in his eyes. And when Ma walked up to him and slapped him, he knew she wasn't afraid. Well, you were brave too, Laura said. Even if it was only a stump, you thought it was a bear. You'd have hit him on the head with a club if he had been a bear, wouldn't you, Pa? Yes, said Pa, I would. You see, I had to. Then Ma said it was bedtime. She helped Laura and Mary undress and button up their red flannel nightgowns. They knelt down by the trundle bed and said their prayers. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Ma kissed them both and tucked the covers in around them. They lay there a while, looking at Ma's smooth parted hair and her hands busy with the sewing in the lamplight. Her needle made little clicking sounds against her thimble, and then the thread went softly swish through the pretty calico Pa had traded furs for. Then Laura looked at Pa, who was greasing his boots. His mustaches and his hair and his long brown beard were silky in the lamplight, and the colors of his plaid jacket were gay. He whistled cheerfully while he worked, and then he sang. The birds were singing in the morning, and the myrtle and the ivy were in bloom, and the sun o'er the hills was a dawning. That was when I laid her in the tomb. It was a warm night. The fire had gone to coals on the hearth, and Pa did not build it up. All around the little house, in the big woods, there were little sounds of falling snow, and from the eaves was the drip, drip of the melting icicles. In just a little while, the trees would be putting out their baby leaves, all rosy and yellow and pale green, and there would be wildflowers and birds in the woods. Then there would be no more stories by the fire at night, but all day long, Laura and Mary would run and play among the trees, for it would be spring. Chapter 7. the sugar snow. Oh, and I forgot to show you a picture of Pa on the stump. Chapter 7, The Sugar Snow. For days the sun shone and the weather was warm. There was no frost on the windows in the mornings. All day the icicles fell one by one from the eaves with soft smashing and crackling sounds in the snowbanks beneath. The trees shook their wet black branches and chunks of snow fell down. When Laura and Mary pressed their noses against the cold window pane, they could see the drip of water from the eaves and the bare branches of the trees. The snow did not glitter. It looked soft and tired. Under the trees, it was pitted where the chunks of snow had fallen, and the banks beside the path were shrinking and settling. Then one day, Laura saw a patch of bare ground in the yard. All day it grew bigger, and before night the whole yard was bare mud. Only the icy path was left, and the snowbanks along the path, and the fence and beside the woodpile. "Can I go out to play, Ma?" Laura asked, and Ma said, "May, Laura." "May I go out to play?" "You may tomorrow," Ma promised. That night, Laura woke up shivering. The bed covers felt thin and her nose was icy cold. Ma was tucking another quilt over her. "Snuggle close to Mary," Ma said, "and you'll get warm." In the morning, the house was warm from the stove, but when Laura looked out the window, she saw that the ground was covered with soft, thick snow. All along the branches of the trees, the snow was piled like feathers, and it lay in mounds along the tops of the rail fence, and stood up in great white balls on top of the gateposts. Pa came in, shaking the soft snow from his shoulders and stamping it from his boots. "It's a sugar snow," he said. Laura put her tongue out quickly to a little bit of the white snow that lay in a fold of his sleeve. It was nothing but wet on her tongue, like any snow. She was glad that nobody had seen her taste it. "Why is it a sugar snow, Pa?" she asked him. But he said he didn't have time to explain now. He must hurry away. He was going to Grandpa's. Grandpa lived far away in the big woods where the trees were closer together and larger. Laura stood at the window and watched Pa, big and swift and strong, walking away over the snow. His gun was on his shoulder, his hatchet and powder horn hung at his side, and his tall boots made great tracks in the soft snow. Laura watched him till he was out of sight in the woods. It was late before he came home that night. Ma had already lighted the lamp when he came in. Under one arm, he carried a large package, and in the other was a big covered wooden bucket. "Here, Caroline," he said, bringing the package and the bucket to Ma. And then he put the gun on its hooks over the door. "If I'd met a bear," he said, "I couldn't have shot him without dropping my load," he laughed. "And if I'd dropped that bucket and bundle, I wouldn't have had to shoot him. I would have stood and watched him eat what's in them and lick his chops." Ma unwrapped the package, and there were 2 hard brown cakes, each as large as a milk pan. She uncovered the bucket, and it was full of dark brown syrup. Here, Laura and Mary," Pa said, and he gave them each a little round package out of his pocket. They took off the paper wrappings, and each had a little hard brown cake with beautifully crinkled edges. "Bite it," said Pa, and his blue eyes twinkled. Each bit off one little crinkle, and it was sweet. It crumbled in their mouths. It was even better than their Christmas candy. "Maple sugar," said Pa. Supper was ready, and Laura and Mary laid the little maple sugar cakes beside their plates, while they ate maple syrup on their bread. After supper, Pa took them on his knees as he sat before the fire and told them about his day at Grandpa's and the sugar snow. All winter, Pa said, Grandpa has been making wooden buckets and little troughs. He made them of cedar and white ash for those wood. To make the troughs, he split out little sticks as long as my hand and as big as my 2 fingers near one end. Then Grandpa cut the stick half through and split off one half. This left him a flat stick with a square piece at one end. Then, with a bit, he bored a hole lengthwise through the square part, and with his knife, he whittled the wood till it was only a thin shell around the hole. The flat part of the stick he hollowed out with his knife till it was a little trough. He made dozens of them, and he made 10 new wooden buckets. He had them all ready when the first warm weather came and the sap began to move in the trees. Then he went into the maple woods with the bit he bored a hole in each maple tree, and he hammered the round end of the little trough into the hole. Then he set a cedar bucket on the ground under the flat end. The sap, you know, is the blood of a tree. It comes up from the roots when the warm weather begins in the spring, and it goes to the very tip of each branch and twig to make the green leaves grow. Well, when the maple sap came to the hole in the tree, it ran out of the tree down the little trough and into the bucket. Oh, didn't it hurt the tree? Laura asked. No more than it hurts when you prick your little finger and it bleeds, said Pa. Every day, Grandpa puts on his boots and his warm coat and his fur cap, and he goes out into the snowy woods and gathers the sap with a barrel on a sled. He drives from tree to tree and empties the sap from the buckets into the barrel. Then he hauls it to a big iron kettle that hangs by a chain from a cross timber between 2 trees. He empties the sap into the iron kettle. There's a big bonfire under the kettle, and the sap boils, and Grandpa watches it carefully. The fire must be hot enough to keep the sap boiling, but not hot enough to make it boil over. Every few minutes, the sap must be skimmed. Grandpa skims with a big, long-handled wooden ladle that he made out of basswood. You all see that? When the sap gets too hot, Grandpa lifts ladlefuls of it high in the air and pours it back slowly. This cools the sap a little and helps keep it from boiling too fast. When the sap is boiled down just enough, he fills the buckets with the syrup. After that, he boils the sap until it grains, and he cools it in a saucer. The instant the sap is graining, Grandpa jumps to the fire and rakes it all out from beneath the kettle. Then, as fast as he can, he ladles the thick syrup into the milk pans that are standing ready. In the pans, the syrup turns to cakes of hard brown maple sugar. So that's why it's a sugar snow? Because Grandpa is making sugar? Laura asked. No, Pa said. It's called a sugar snow because a snow this time of year means the men can make more sugar. You see, this little cold spell and the snow will hold back the leafing of the trees, and that makes a longer run of sap. When there's a long run of sap, it means that Grandpa can make enough maple sugar to last all the year for common every day. When he takes his furs to town, he will not need to trade for much store sugar. He will get only a little store sugar to have on the table when company comes. Grandpa must be glad there's a sugar snow, said Laura. Yes, Pa said. He's very glad. He's going to sugar off again next Monday, and he says we must all come. Okay. Pa's blue eyes twinkled. He had been saving the best for last, and he said to Ma, Hey, Carolyn, there'll be a dance. Ma smiled. She looked very happy, and she laid down her mending for a minute. Oh, Charles, she said. Then she went back to her mending, but she kept on smiling. She said, I'll wear my delaine. Ma's delaine dress was beautiful. It was a dark green with a little pattern all over it that looked like ripe strawberries. A dressmaker had made it in the East, in the place where Ma had came from when she married Pa and moved out west to the big woods in Wisconsin. Ma had been very fashionable. Before she married Pa, a dressmaker made her clothes. The delaine was kept wrapped in paper and laid away. Laura and Mary had never seen Ma wear it, but that she had shown it to them once. She had let them touch the beautiful dark red buttons that buttoned up the basque up the front, and she had shown them how neatly the whalebones were put into the seams inside with hundreds of crisscross stitches. It showed how important a dance was if Ma was going to wear the beautiful delaine dress. Laura and Mary were excited. They bounced up and down on Pa's knees and asked questions about the dance until at last he said, "Now you girls run along to bed. You'll know all about the dance when you see it. I have to put a new string on my fiddle." There were sticky fingers and sweet mouths to be washed. Then there were prayers to be said. By the time Laura and Mary were snug in their trundle bed, Pa and the fiddle were both singing. While he kept time with his foot on the floor, "I'm Captain Jinks of the Horse Marines. I feed my horse on corn and beans, and I've often gone beyond my means, for I'm Captain Jinks of the Horse Marines. I'm captain in the army." All righty. Well, I don't see any participants' names on here, so nobody must be chatting. So let's pop out the chat and say, hey, everybody, how you doing? One of the things they don't mention, it's they kind of dance around it, is that Grandpa gathers all the sap and boils it at once and cooks it down. And he regulates the temperature by lifting the sap way up and pouring it back in and letting it cool until it doesn't overboil. I'm going to experiment the next time we do maple syrup, because I want to make maple sugar. So I'm gonna work harder at that this year. How's everybody doing? Well, thank you, Auntie Pam. Good evening. I love Little House. I'm really sorry we're done for the night. But you know what? Well, we're done reading anyway. What was I going to say? Do you ever notice in these books, I guess it's because there's children books, they never mention outhouses or Ma being pregnant, or having babies, or they don't even really cover the time where, any questions? Oh, well, thank you. Like I said, I'm going to order, I forget what it's called, but it's a biography or an autobiography. One's the autobiography, one's the biography, and it's written actually by somebody else, but it goes through all of the stuff and all of Laura's history. And so I think it's worth the money. So I'm going to send it, because this is only the first book. There's like 8 more to go. So we're gonna want to delve deeper and deeper into the backgrounds. Just love this series. I'll go back and listen, of course. Of course you will. Well, listen, folks. It's 5:30 and Howie's home from hunting. Dear Howard, did you get? Obviously, you didn't get any, or you would have told me. Huh? Yeah. Did you put the rooster in the greenhouse? No. Please do that. No. Okay. I caught a rooster. I caught another rooster. They've been coming around my property and around my hen house. So I just put a barrel down, rain barrel down with feed in it. And one of them walked right in. The other one got kind of savvy. So I thought a bird in the barrel is better than 2 in the bush. And I upended the barrel and put an oven rack over it. And Howie's going to put it out in the greenhouse in the morning. And if the other one decides to take the bait, then I've got 2 extra roosters for the pot, right? I have loved this today. Even hubby was listening. He chuckled about Palm the Stump. I'm telling you, you know the story about the screech owl? That's happened to me. I when I lived in Apsley, I was walking home to my sister's house from my boyfriend's house, and I heard ooh, ooh, ooh. And to me, it sounded like a monkey, an ape talking, apes talking to each other, but it was hoo, hoo, hoo. It never dawned on me that it was an owl. It wasn't until I got home and my sister said, Bev, it was probably an owl. You sound just like an owl when you make those noises. It's like, oh, okay. I'd never been outside at night. I don't hear a lot at night because our windows are usually closed. And if they're open, it's usually the fan on, right? Oh, and the current, yeah, that's what he meant when he said, you see, I had to. He had no choice. It was like he couldn't stand there all night and stare it down. Well, he could have, but that's when he said, you know what? I just got to get home. I just got to deal with what's in front of me, and I'll deal with anything else as I go down. You imagine the peril of to walk in the woods at night with them bears around. That was real. And you know what? It still is. Just not as, I mean, back then, we're talking just after the Civil War, right? I figure this is probably, yeah, probably the 1870s. And I mean, when she describes how for as long as you can walk in a day and there's no houses, you know what I mean? There's no people, right? So anyway, so what else was I going to mention? Oh, well, I guess when I was a kid, I had first editions of Little House. I wish I had them now. Do you know how much they'd be worth? Wow. Anyway, folks, I'll see you guys tomorrow night at 5 o'clock or tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock for the next bit of history and reading. And then hopefully I will be ordering the next book and I'll be able to fill in more gaps and add some flesh out some more bones. Because remember, this isn't, a lot of this is fiction, right? It's all based on her life. It's not all, the incidences and stuff are similar, but they have been fleshed out by, editors and stuff. So you're welcome. I'll see you all same time tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for Chapter 8, the Sugaring Off Dance. All right. Take care. God bless. I got to go feed Papa.